The Strun Incarnon is one of my favourite weapons in the game, and it's pretty damn strong. While in its base form, it's a fairly standard high pellet shotgun, but when transformed, it becomes a high status rocket launcher with 40 total ammo. For this video, I decided to take it to level cap disruption. You could do this with pretty much any Warframe with decent weapon buffing abilities, but I find Roar to be one of the best, since it can be used on any Warframe and double dips our status damage. So I decided to take my Ash with Roar Subsumed over his Bladestorm so I can take advantage of Precision Intensify. I will note I am using 3 Tileforged blue Archon shards for energy max and 2 Tileforged red shards for duration. If you don't have those blue shards on your Ash, you might have to make some changes to the build to make sure your energy is still comfy. Other than that, this build is just high duration with Rolling Guard, Energy Nexus and the augments for his first and second ability. In the Aura and Exila slots, I'm using Worthy Camaraderie and Handspring. For the Arcanes, I'm using Crepuscular, like you almost always should with Ash, and for the second slot, I, like a complete dumbass, used Arcane Acceleration for the whole run, because I forgot it doesn't apply to shotguns. What I would recommend instead is Arcane Rage for more primary damage on headshot, or Arcane Tempo, the proper Arcane for shotgun fire rate. Alternatively, you could use Molt Augmented for a stronger Roar. Now for the Strun setup, we should first take a look at the evolutions. For the first one, I'm using Blazing Barrel for a small buff to multi-shot. This effect is nice because it's easy to stack up, only requiring 5 shots fired regardless if you hit anything, and the duration is infinite. However, it does go away if you switch in or out of Incarnate form. Unfortunately, the effect does not seem to work for its base form. I could be wrong, but I cannot see any difference in how many status effects get applied, and even in the stat page, you can see the multi-shot increases for the Incarnate mode, but stays the same for the base form. When it works properly, the effect acts like a percentage buff, so after getting those 5 stacks, your base multi-shot becomes 1.25, which then gets multiplied by multi-shot mods. I would almost never recommend Tenno targeting, as the condition is harder to trigger and the punch through doesn't work for the Incarnate form. For the second evolution, I'd recommend Rapid Reinforcements to significantly speed up your Incarnate transformation speed. Galvanic Reload straight up doesn't work for Incarnate ammo, and Swift Deliverance is just too small of a boost to be worth it in my opinion. Now for the final evolution, the best one in my opinion is Elemental Balance for an insane 132% buff to base status chance in Incarnate form. The second option, Commodore's Fortune, is a 12% boost to base crit chance, which is only okay when considering this weapon already has 48% base crit chance in Incarnate form. The third option is Brutal Edge, which is a mix between Elemental Balance and Commodore's Fortune, giving 4% base crit chance and 48% base status chance for the Incarnate form. Neither of these are good enough to justify losing out on having 182% base status chance for the Incarnate form. For the mod setup, we are using a fairly standard viral heat build with Shotgun Elementalist. Notably, I'm running 0 fire rate mods because I'm almost always using Reinforced Bond on my companion. I'm also using Shotgun Savvy instead of Primed Point Blank because the damage boost is still larger even if it doesn't apply to the radial attack. And then in the Arcane slot, I'm using Primary Crux to multiply our already sky-high base status chance to 728%. Then with mods factored in, this becomes 928%. Now, if you happen to be using a different Warframe or a slightly different build to mine, and still want to make sure it can perform similarly or better than my loadout, just make sure you are getting the same or more damage as me. So in the sim, against enemies that are neutral to heat damage, I'm getting roughly 3 to 7 million damage heat procs from one headshot. Then, if I armor strip after hitting them, that becomes roughly 17 to 31 million damage worth of heat procs. If you wanted more damage however, you could use a primer or a priming companion. I didn't for the purpose of this video because I wanted to showcase the weapon with as little requirements as possible while still feeling nice to play. So for my companion, I'm using a standard Panzer build with Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond for extra crit, and so I can forego fire rate mods on the rest of my build. Then for my operator, I'm using Magus Lockdown to immobilize Demolists and Unairu to armor strip them, since it's permanent and can't be nullified. And then other than that, there's not much left to say. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy the build if you choose to try it. Bye.